$20 million since last year. And I'd like to know how much of that is related to the reval of 5%, and how much of that is associated with new growth and new construction.
New growth accounted for approximately $494,000 worth of tax increase in tax revenues. That isn't worth. I can't, and I don't have a calculator on me. And I
44 million. 44 million?
44 million.
44 of the 124
Yeah.
is new growth. Is new growth.
Right. The rest is valuation increases. We have a charge from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to estimate values, estimate the market value of homes at 100% at the beginning of the January 1st, prior to the beginning of each fiscal year. That's our charge, and that's our requirement. And so it is incumbent upon us, when the market's increasing, to increase values annually. It has not been the practice of this office in the past to do that. But the market has been moving up so robustly and so quickly that the Board of Assessors, I think in their wisdom, decided to do an interim increase to try to minimize the impact of the revaluation when it occurs again in 2 more years. At that juncture, if the market still continues the way it's been going up, we'll have another substantial increase. And another reason for concern about why the values are going up so quickly. An interim increase, which is not really a revaluation, it's just an interim increase, seemed to be appropriate at this time. At least the board decided.
Mr. Kelly.
From one of the slides up there, it looked like we've been having a substantial increase in property values since 1998.
Yes.
Is this the first year that you've done an interim?
No, we did, an interim increase the year before the revaluation, the last revaluation. So last year we had a revaluation,
Right.
and the year prior to that we did an interim increase also.
So this will be the third year
This will be the third
in
year.
a row?
Yes.
I just think it's, I think we need to keep in mind that these increased property values is only an increase in someone's wealth if they sell the home. And I'm afraid that this is the problem in which we're starting to outstrip longtime residents of their ability to pay. I'm not sure that doing this for a third year in a row is responsive to the people in town and the increases that they're now facing. You know, the chart you showed substantial increases for the last, well, it's probably longer than 5 years. I know 98, but these other charts that we have here that go all the way back. It just seems that it's almost like we're piling on a little bit right now.
The increase in valuation has very little to do with, aside from a shift in allocation of taxes, has very little to do with an increase in taxation. It is the increase of the levy on an annual basis that has everything to do with taxation. And that is the factor that increases the taxes.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It's the increase in the levy on an annual basis that increases the taxes to the individual property owner. It's not the increase in valuation.
Well, I have to disagree with you. There was a 2.5% increase on property taxes a year ago by law, yet people's personal taxes on property went up much more than that. They went up substantially in a lot of neighborhoods.
It wasn't a 2.5% increase.
Well, but that was strictly due to the reevaluation of the property.
Perhaps, Dick, either you or George could go through that whole misconception that when one opens their tax bill you open it every quarter, unfortunately. The annual,
When the bad news
you know,
comes in
yeah.
December.
when the rate is set, there's an expectation of the homeowner, I'm going to open my bill and I have a 2.5% increase. And in some cases, it's much, much, much greater than that. And in other cases, it may be flat or less than that, depending upon the market. So I think there's this, the levy increase is 2.5, and then the value
Right, but that,
drives the individual.
but that's what I'm getting at, though, is, I understand when you're talking about the tax levy, but when you increase, or when the values, when we do another assessment and the values go up, the burden to that individual homeowner is going up substantially. And as was pointed out, you know, the new homes are already evaluated at that price. But the people that are in homes and have been here for years, who the only way they realize, or will ever realize the value of that home is to sell it, and their goal is to stay in their home. We're taxing them out of the home by constantly reassessing on a year-to-year basis.
When we
They're
did-
not realizing the increase in value. Yeah, we're telling them, your home has now gone up, so now when we divide up the levy, your share of that has gone up, and it's gone up substantially.
The value, they have realized an increase in value, and that's something that they're using, that they're banking on. It's something that they receive, if they don't receive it until they sell their house has still gone up in value. And also, one of the things, let me backtrack for a second.
But the question is, do we need to ring the cash register every year?
Well, we do, because the charge is by the Commonwealth that we need to increase, we need to maintain properties at market value.
But why didn't we do that prior to,
I don't know why we did
3 years
prior to it. I can't answer that, speak to that directly, but we should have. And perhaps the market wasn't going up as substantially as it is now, and it didn't seem to be as necessary, and that's trying to read into the mindset of the board. Yes.
What about addressing the issue if we went to the bare bones minimum of the state requirement, which is to do a reval every 3 years? Right? You've got to complete a reval every 3 years.
3 years.
Right? That's the bare bones minimum. So
The bare bones-
talk about the impact of that versus interims. There's a trade-off there.
Sure. If you wait every 3 years, the values will go up dramatically, substantially, because we have to reflect the market. Our charges reflect the market. So instead of going up 5% 1 year and 5% the next and 5% the third year, they go up 15%. And that change in value, that sudden change in value, is almost more shocking and more devastating to homeowners when they see that substantial change in value than it is if it goes up on a gradual basis.
wouldn't there be a substantial drop in the rate, though, also?
Sure, there was this year and
But
last
I mean,
year.
even more, you're saying that 15%, if we do it every 3 years, as opposed to going 5, 5, and 5, wouldn't the rate be driven down
Sure.
substantially also in a shocking manner if we did the reval every 3 years?
It would. The problem is that what value does, and what you're getting at, is we're dealing with a mixed amount, this constant amount of money. The levy limit goes up, can only go up 2.5% per year.
Right.
Or
Plus.
plus.
Plus
new growth.
Plus new growth,
Right.
right. Plus new growth, which is all new construction. And with all new construction, it only goes to the people who have been building homes or adding on to homes. But basically, in a very simplistic way, if we had new growth, it would only, the tax levy limit could only go up 2.5% per year. That, and if we were to revalue the properties, and if that levy limit only increased by 2.5% per year, and we doubled the values of the properties, the taxes would only go up 2.5%.
But again, not individual bills.
No,
That's
bill across the board.
That's
And what we're dealing with is a
almost
shift in allocation. This year, we did change the values in condominiums, individual condo units, with the exception of the greens, went up 10%. Besides that, all other properties went up an average of 5 to 6%. All of them, commercial, residential, and commercial, residential, and industrial, all went up approximately 5% in value. So everything went up the same amount
Across the board.
across the board.
And then the other benefit of doing it more frequently 3-year time horizon, just look back over the last 3 years, the market can change dramatically, versus the high end or the low end. So if you wait and you just do it every 3 years, you're not getting to the right, to the right point. I mean, either way, it's pain. I don't disagree
Yeah,
with you.
I look at it as, can I
Unfortunately-
hold on to the money in my pocket for 3 years, or should I give it to the increase to the town right now? And what could I do with that added money for 2 more years before having to pay it out? It's a matter of who gets to control the money for a set period of time. I mean, personally, I'd rather have it myself than hand it over. You know what I mean?
You're in the position of control to decide that. Not to decide that. The Board of Assessors operates independently.
Right.
And we have to, because we're charged by the state to value the properties, to protect the values of the property for the community, and to represent values at the market, we pretty much feel, I think that it's important, I'm speaking for the board here, and I'm not really a member of the board. The board feels that it's important to increase values on an annual basis and to reflect the market, so that when the revalue is done in 2 years, we don't have an awful lot of people who are upset at the board for really jacking the values up. When we do a revaluation, the people who are upset come in January and they say, how can you have increased my property in 1 year 15%? They don't realize that that's a 3-year increase. So it's a shock.
There's another component to that, which is that, I know I have friends that have gone through this, that if a community doesn't maintain the value, then when they apply for a loan, refinance or a home equity loan, there's sometimes, a lot of financial institutions, you get in the tax bill, they'll make the loan based on the tax bill, but if they haven't maintained that value, then they're having to pay appraisal fees and all kinds of things in order to get that home equity loan so that they could put the addition on, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't disagree with you. And unfortunately, I think what we experienced as a community last year was a tremendous growth in the lower end of the market, because North Reading is a great place to live, and we hope to keep it that way, which is why we're having this discussion.
That's right.
But there's no,
Yeah,
it's a
two
tough,
sides to it. I
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Mr. Kelly, also, we state something very emphatically too. If the values were to go down, we would be trending them down also.
When do you anticipate that happening?
That's a good question. Well, it could happen next year. And we could have been a lot more optimistic about our value increases this year. What caused the board, I think, to reflect a little bit more cautiously on increasing values, because values, the ratios that we look at sales to assessment ratios. The sales to assessment ratios tell us how close we are to the market. And if we're at 100%, we're right at the market. This spring, past the end of the beginning of the as-of date, ratios were down around 65 to 75%. We had good reason to increase the values between 10 and 15%, maybe even 20%, to bring them up to 100%. But I think the board thought it wasn't prudent to do that because we don't know what the market's going to do next year, and it could go down. And it's very upsetting to jack up the values 1 year and then bring them down the next. So we're trying to be a little bit more proactive and be a little bit more forward-looking and not being as drastic in our increases.
Let me know when you can predict what the market's going to do.
I'll sell you an interest in my company.
Mrs. Bailey, I see you, I'll get to you in a minute. Mrs. Bailey.
I just wanted to say in my figures that I'm not questioning the way values have gone, because I think that any one of us who's maybe refinanced our home and seen an appraisal, or looks at the real estate ads in the paper every day can see where residential values have gone. So I wasn't questioning. I just wanted to make it clear, I'm not questioning my belief in those valuation numbers. I was more commenting on the